Hello and welcome. My name's Kate Valentine. I'm founder of Singing Mama's Choir, and I have the great pleasure today of interviewing Annie Zylstra. Hello, Annie.
Hello, Kate.
Welcome to our Meet the Composers mini-series. So Annie, if you don't know her already, she's a community choir leader. She's a choir composer. She weaves baskets. There's not much this woman can't do, but today we're going to talk to her about her life and what's led to composing music. Is that okay with you, Annie?
That sounds wonderful.
And at the moment you are in Wisconsin.
Correct.
Did I say it right?
Nice pronunciation.
Thank you, I've been practicing. So Annie, can you tell me, have you got a first memory, an earliest memory of writing songs?
I mean, what is writing? This is a question I ask a lot in this kind of oral tradition sharing world. Like, what is writing a song? Because a lot of people make up songs all the time, and then often those are the songs that go out into gatherings and groups and get added on and sung by lots of people, just kind of in a spontaneous almost way. And I've been doing that since I was a little tiny child, Mari's age, your daughter's age. With my family, by myself, just like gobbledygooking songs. And that kind of instinct to me is a lot of ways where these kinds of songs that we sing in this community come from. And I really started putting them together and like kind of having the balls to share them with people in this way, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay, so give me an example. First of all, of little tiny Annie. What kind of things, can you remember the kind of things that little tiny Annie would have been singing about, or can you remember anything that you did sing really young?
Oh, verbal, non-verbal, just kind of like things that are going on. I mean, it's really like not any different from myself now in our, just like in my house, like in quarantine, like every single thing that's happening just kind of gets sung aloud, even if it's really crazy, to either tunes that my partner and I know in our house, or we're making up our own tunes. I have memories of going on road trips with my mom and grandma as a little tiny kid, and just like singing literally the entire time from entering the car to exiting the car, and like sometimes getting threatened to get kicked out of the car and abandoned because it can be a lot to be often opera singing.
Okay, so that threat to kick you out of the car didn't stop you from singing, right?
No, I don't know what could have stopped me.
Well, let's not go there. Let's not go there, because you didn't, and that's brilliant. So then, you say 6 or so years ago, you had the balls to start sharing some of your own. Can you tell us about the ones that you started sharing first?
Oh,
How that was?
I haven't thought about this in a long time. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I just remember like singing little songs in the way that I do every day, and then realizing like, oh, I could share this with other people, or oh, I could add a part to this. And I remember it originally having a little Dropbox where I would record on my phone just like little one-liney kinds of songs and add a layer onto it. And then I had like 2 friends that I shared this Dropbox with as kind of like a having courage to like let someone else hear this. My friends Lindsay Scott and my mentor Liz, which so shout out to them. And really like in a lot of ways, like having that and having people listen to those songs, it's like the internet, it's such a safe place to be like, I'm just gonna put this little thing out here and see what happens. And then these women friends of mine would listen and be like, that's so great, like I love that, can I share that? And I was like, oh, maybe I could share that too. And
Okay.
so started to get more confidence, and being in song gatherings many times throughout the year, and just kind of being like, I'm gonna.
Okay, so that was a question. Yeah, absolutely. You gave it a try. So what did you, when those songs started to come that you thought maybe that, and you shared them there, did you already have experience in choirs then? Is that what led you to begin kind of writing them for choirs, obviously?
Yeah, well, I've been in choirs in the traditional sense that we all know about my whole life, and up through college, university, and then really finding sort of this community of people sharing in the oral tradition in a much different way than I'd ever sung in before, through one of my early mentors, Liz Rogg in Iowa, and just being like, what? Like, we can sing in this way, and we can sing on topics that are relevant and beauty inspiring. It's really like transitioning into that community style of like folk community style sharing, singing.
How did you enter? How did you
songs.
enter that? What was your entry into that type of singing?
I guess it was originally being in college, and my friend Liz Rogg's daughter, who was my same age at the time, coming in, she was invited to come into one of our classes and opened up the talk she was giving on midwifery with us all singing a song together. And my friends and I were in that class, and we're like, we could do this? We could just sing together in this way? And then Aida, my friend's daughter's name, invited us to a small little gathering of people, and we sang songs, and my college friends and I basically got addicted to it and just started going to every kind of public offering that there was in our town where we were going to school.
What was that first song?
So cute to remember. I think it comes from the Jewish tradition, or at least it sounds like it does. I don't know that much about it, but it goes, Haida, 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 Haida. Just so simple and sweet.
I know, if we weren't on Zoom, I'd be singing it along with you.
Yeah.
So why was that? What was different about that for you? That way of singing?
I don't know. It just grabbed me instantly. There's something about like being buried in the sheet music of tradition. Anyone who's been in a traditional choir and been in oral tradition style choir can probably resonate with the difference, like being buried in like a stale hymnal, which hymns are cool, but like sheet music, often in my tradition, Christian sort of music, where people are totally disengaged from each other and totally disengaged from the world, like in some room, buried in their sheet music. This was very stale, and I was going to university studying music at the time, and I was just like, oh, like I really thought I would like this more. I thought I would enjoy studying music and making music with people, but it just really didn't. Wasn't like the kind of life in it that I wanted, and always with the end goal of performing, which is honestly just bored me. And so hearing like, oh wow, I'm here with my friends and my classmates, and we're just like fully engaged with each other and like doing this thing that feels actually a little bit goofy, and we're like, ooh, like, can we really do? There's a sense of like, it's a sense that I often, when people come into my choir, I notice this.
Right.
I feel this sense of like, people are like, can I really do this? Is this fun? Or is this like weird? What, I am enjoying it. It's like this whole like little like transformation process that I observe. And then they're like, wow, I like really enjoy this. I just totally remember feeling that with my friends in the class. Were like, it's kind of goofy to be like 19-year-olds like bouncing around in a circle singing, but we really love it.
Well, there's so many different ways I could go to talk more on this subject, but we'll keep it to the composing. So with the chance now over the last 6 years to practice more sharing your own material, do you have a sense for how far your songs have traveled?
Yeah, I mean, well, I can talk about specifically one song that we just talked about a little bit together before this. But 3 years ago, I was in a time of really big upheaval and grief in my life. And this song came out of that time. And I'll just use that song as a little case study because it traveled really, really far. And still to this day, probably once a week or so, someone writes to me about this song, or I find something on the internet about this song. And so, yeah, I mean, people in other countries have reached out a little bit, and then choirs like in Philadelphia and California and Washington and Canada have all sung this song in their groups. And so it's been a really eye-opening experience as someone who's never really identified as a composer or like sold their music in the way that's really common in the natural voice community, for instance, where you can go on a website and buy people's music and then they use it in their choirs. And I offer my music online and added a donation element to it after feeling like, oh, this could support me being able to write more music. And so sometimes people donate. But yeah, it traveled really far, and it's just been like interesting to sit back and like see how that affects my own feeling of the song and
So
how much I
what does that do for you to hear it back, to know that it's traveled, to know it's been sung?
yeah, I mean it's a totally mixed bag because in a lot of ways it's really amazing. And also having been in this oral tradition singing world for coming up on almost a decade now, and having watched other songs do this, just travel so far. And like, I mean, Kate, when I met you, one of the hilarious things we realized is we were at the same New Year's Eve bonfire in an
Yes.
eco village in India, and you probably learned a song for me there, and we didn't remember. And then a few years
In a
later,
small group of people, sure. Yeah.
you know, the songs just travel in this really mind-boggling way. And so in a lot of ways, it was fun to be a part of that. And then it was also just like, oh, I really have no control over this in a lot of ways. And this song actually held like a lot of really tender emotion for me. And so sometimes when I would encounter it being sung in kind of random ways that weren't like how I wrote it, or with like just like a really like fun party light vibe, I was kind of like, ooh, like that's my grief that's being partied on a little bit. So yeah, it's just like a total mix.
Yeah.
I've came to find, and I've heard this from a lot of other people who write music, but like the approach that people take to sharing your songs like actually has an impact on you to some degree. And in the other sense, you really can't control it, and it's just out there, and that's a really beautiful thing.
So that was absolutely that was one of my questions. Have you ever heard it back differently to how you wrote it? So you're saying you heard it with a different energy to how you wrote it. But have you ever heard it? Did it ever come back in a way that no, I didn't write that. I definitely didn't put those notes in. Have you kind of heard it back in that way?
Oh yeah, and with different words, and that's just something really common in oral
Yeah.
tradition,
Yeah.
modern singing. And I think there's a balance of like, and yeah, a lot of me feels like, oh yeah, that's totally normal and fine, and I don't really feel personally attached to it changing. And then there's another part of me that's like, well, like it came out, like that particular piece of harmonic dissonance was there to invoke this particular feeling, and without that, is it really the song? Is it the same song, and is it serving its purpose? And that word, or like that word that changed, was actually really the thing that like spread the message of this song. And so yeah, it's just and then again coming back to like, oh well, we can't control it, and so it's going to be whatever it is, but it does bring these interesting reflections. And I do think like in olden times when songs were passed in oral tradition, when we didn't have access to recordings and the internet and sheet music and all these things that we have now, people would locally adapt songs to make sense for them and their communities. And that's like one way that oral tradition music changes. But and today, sometimes I like, you know, if you change a song that much, it just feels a little bit lazy, because we have like, I have full recordings, I have music available, people can check. I'm like, just like check it out before you totally change it, because we have access to all these tools in these times. And so yeah, it's a balance, it's a mixed bag for sure.
And interesting that you're hearing feedback direct to you. So it's obviously traveling along with, this is a song by Annie Zylstra. Maybe some of the story behind the song is being shared too. Have you had that feedback?
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I can see that is because so many people write to me about it. I'm like, oh cool, like you are making an attempt to like share this in a good way, and like asking permission and checking up on parts and like asking to record it and all these things. And that's really, that like lands really well with me. I'm just like, yeah, cool. You know, like this like really dear to me being that I kind of put out into the world feels well cared for by the people who are carrying it. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And can I ask you, Annie, why do you write songs?
Why do I write songs? Why do I eat food? Why do I wake up in the day? Well, I could get really philosophical about it and say things like, I really want there to be a rich and current body of repertoire to draw from in these oral tradition singing communities that we're a part of, and in our community of choirs, because I think I think it's great to draw from other traditions and from other times of music, to learn from those traditions and times. And also to balance that, it feels really key to be creating new content, which is really new culture, for us people in this community to use. And it's completely notable that the primary group of people who are doing this kind of singing are white people who are European origined. And so, for instance, I would personally rather be writing new music and drawing from a community repertoire made by friends, like for these current times, and like drawing on music origined from enslaved people and in America, for instance, which is a really common thing in this culture, or singing African music, which I don't have really any relationship to at all. And well, the relationship I do have is through an oppressed heritage, like an oppressorship heritage. And so, yeah, it just feels really important, like if we're engaging in cultural work, to be generating new and vibrant content to be using that like can meet us where we are in our communities, and like really celebrate where we are, celebrate the seasons, things that are relevant to us and not just from other cultures and other times. Is that a satisfactory answer?
It feels really real, Annie. And it's really inspiring to hear. And I wonder, do you vocalize that to your singers as well, and to your communities, that that's your intention and your responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, I've been mentored really well in learning that. And the original kind of community singing, oral tradition singing world that I came in, I mean, we did still sing a lot of music from other cultures, which is enriching, but really the whole rootedness of that movement was like, wow, what we need is here in our own communities, and like we can make it up. And I learned, that was the direct message from my mentor, Liz Rogg, was like, we're here to like create new meaningful culture in our community that can sustain us in our lives, and using singing to do that. And so I'm really grateful to have been mentored in that way, and like brought up in that kind of context of singing culture, and not just like, we're only going to use other people's rituals, oppressed people's rituals, and oppressed people's music, which is really common in this sort of larger community. So,
well, I mean, you say you've had that mentoring, which we've talked before about that, and also I feel like you're really incredibly vocal, and I wonder also, has that come from, have you had intense experiences where you've felt that it's wrong to be sharing music from other traditions in the way that we do? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like this same thing with how I feel about my songs being shared. It feels like a total gradient. And where I'm at currently, I mean, even 4 years ago, I was still sharing songs, I mean, that I learned in our shared experience, like from Zimbabwe and from Cameroon. And I really started moving away from that 3-ish years ago. Just to name that, I have participated in that appropriation and have been a part of that in the past, and have like happily sung with big groups of white people singing African music, for instance. And yeah, I've really taken a break, and just to like reflect on what that means, and like have people of color in our local singing community who are like, that doesn't feel very good for all these white people to be having a party singing music from our oppressed heritage. And so, yeah, I mean, just really following the leadership of those people and the requests of them, which has been like very generous of them to bring that forward in different ways. And I could talk more about that, or share more about that in the link later, with their permission. But yeah, I've definitely been in a lot of situations that made me really uncomfortable and really cringe in this little sub community. And there's obviously varying levels of integrity with which we can share music outside our cultural heritage. And yeah, it's really a mixed bag.
Okay, definitely read Annie's blog on her website, linked below. Absolutely get involved in that because you're creating conversation on that blog. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Totally perfect just really like candid conversation. Nothing like.
yeah, very alive. Very yeah. Let's go back to little Annie again. We kind of skipped over that. What were your influences growing up? What paint us a picture of what your influences, musical influences and family influences that might have led you into the work you do now?
Wow. Well, my mom is a music teacher, so that's an easy uh, link. Um, yeah, I grew up with a single mom, and I was an only child, and we lived on a corn farm in the middle of what is now known as Trump country. And I spent most of my childhood kind of roving in the woods and in the groves and the fields with my pony that I had, and like really, really, yeah, just spent time outside as like a rural child, and always had music in my life from a young age. Was always encouraged by my family to be singing and joining groups and auditioning for things as a little person. Again, was always like singing songs throughout my days, just gobbledygook or songs that I heard on the radio or whatever. Um, but yeah, I felt like being raised by a single mom. I come from like a very, very conservative mainstream context. And so, yeah, I often get asked like, oh, how did you become like a community organizer in like this kind of radical leftist context? And I think just really like having an unconventional mother who like taught me how to forage, like even though we were inside of this context, and being like having so much time alone as an only child in the country and like with adults, um, and not really like being kind of a weirdo and not fitting into school, just really like set me on this path to be seeking something else besides what was just in front of me. And yeah, just like navigating that as a young person and being like, oh, I had a really evangelical Christian phase as a young person because my life had been so void of like really a sense of meaningful community, in the like, very like rural white culture that I came from. And the main thing about what drew me into the evangelical Christian thing was the singing. Mm. We would go to these camps and there would be just really epic group connective singing, and something in me recognized like, oh, this is something I want. And what I had access to at that time was through this Christian lens. And so it was really amazing then leaving that place and going to college somewhere else and being like, oh, like this is available in this way that feels slightly less like cheesy and oppressive. Cool. Like let's move toward that instead. And yeah, I don't know if these are things I've ever really said out loud or talked about.
That's the idea. The idea of this interview is to unpack, come on, what makes a choir composer? What are the vital ingredients? So anything is the right answer. And so now when you go to write songs, and you talked about that kind of little Annie kind of seeking connection and being alone a lot. How is it now because you're not actually that old now, let's face it, but as a more mature Annie, what's your inspiration when you go to write songs? What is it? What do you get hold of?
I really don't go to write songs.
Okay.
I probably should, and maybe have had the intention to do that in the past, but really when I create a song, what the usual process for me is I'm going about my day and I've noticed myself humming the same thing over and over and over again. And I usually do it unconsciously for like up to an hour. And then I'm suddenly like, oh, I've been humming this thing. And then from there, I'm like, I kind of like that. And I kind of think about like, oh, what have I been thinking about lately? Like what feels like relevant, or like, what am I, what's like catching my attention? And then maybe some words trickle in, and then maybe I plug those words into that little thing. And from there, I like sit down and I record that little thing. I'm like, like what are some other like melodies or concepts and until this kind of polyphonic Just like of the moment thing is created, and then if it's good, I'll like maybe add to it or start to share it. And that's really how I've never like had the discipline of songwriting where I sit down and write a song, which I think would be really cool to have, but it's just never been how I've done it.
Fascinating. It's absolutely fascinates me to hear that process, because you're just noticing that that you're already humming it. So for me, and I'm sure for people watching, like, how do you even get to that bit? I mean, you obviously have some way of an original tune coming to you and humming an original tune. I don't find myself humming original tunes. So how does that happen? Any idea? What was that?
It's a mystery.
Mystery.
Yeah, I really believe, this idea came to me and was popularized through, what's that lady who wrote Eat, Pray, Love? Elizabeth Gilbert, is that her name? Anyway, this idea that songs and poems and ideas are like alive, and they're out in the world, and they're looking around for people who they want to enter, who they know will commit to making them real. And so I really feel that's how songs work with me. They're kind of circling around, like they are singing themselves through my body before I even notice them. Usually how every song I've ever really put out into the world has come. Whenever I've tried to like sit down and be like, yeah, I've been thinking about this thing, I want to write a song and make a melody, it just never works. It sounds really forced, and like I'm not interested in it in the end, and kind of abandon it. So yeah, it's mysterious. It just comes from the moment, from who knows where, from my body, like exploring sounds.
And is that something when you were in your childhood and you were kind of making up these songs, it's a continuation of that, the exploring the sound. So do you think that maybe that was never interrupted for you, even though you had classical training?
Totally. Literally, I can't think of a time in my life when I hadn't been doing that. It was really just finding oral tradition singing and being like, oh, that thing I do could become like content for a greater than me thing that other people do.
Amazing.
And I know other people have that experience too, who are choir leaders and song leaders in this particular way. It's like a reality that's reflected back a lot to me from other people. So it's really fun.
It's absolutely amazing to hear you talk about this, playing with sounds, being in the car, being told you're going to get kicked out of the car, but I'm singing anyway. You carry on singing anyway. And that doesn't get interrupted, that process. And now you find a cause and a way to enjoy this singing, and a cause bigger than you to deliver it. This is amazing. This is the kind of purpose you couldn't dream of, really. Does it fulfill you to be doing this?
Yeah, I don't know what else I would be doing with my time. It's true that during quarantine and the pandemic, I really have not been creating music, working with groups, just like really kind of uninspired during this time. So yeah, it definitely comes in waves, but in general, yeah, who knows what life will bring, but this will always be a part of my life for sure. There's no doubt about that. And
this kind of sense of responsibility that you talked about with creating these songs, bringing this new culture for these community choirs that we're in, does that overwhelm you ever? Does it ever feel like a burden that you have to be part of creating that new way? Is there any downside of it, or is it all good?
I don't really think about it. I just do it. It's just like, it's so naturally, organically happening in these communities that I'm a part of. And you talk about too, in the Singing Mamas network, it just so happens that if you're carrying songs and sharing them with people, new ones trickle in. It's just really just is happening. I don't even know how much. It's good to hold that intention, like, oh, and see, we are doing this. We're like creating new content for our relevant communities. That's great. But yeah, it just really, I don't think we need to think about it too much. It's just happening so majorly. Just in the last 5 years, there have been so many new people in our American community of this kind of music coming onto the scene and like writing totally amazing songs, just like countless new people all of the time, like moving in and making amazing songs, and they're just popping up everywhere and people are singing them, and it's like totally mind-blowing.
And this is good to hear. I'm wondering if because we're obviously, we've been in connection a while, and you live in the States, I'm in the UK. We've got our Natural Voice Community Network, which is pretty small and growing, and you've got a kind of parallel, a natural voice kind of network. Has it got a name?
People, there's different kind of sub communities and names, but I think of it as the community singing movement, which is, it's pretty much identical to natural voice singing.
Yeah.
Although there's, yeah, I mean, y'all have been doing it longer than us, so there's more like epic concerts, like reading the sheet music and that kind of vibe.
Well, I'm just wondering about, I'm wondering about the differences. Like, obviously we have things that are universal about the movements, but what do you observe of the differences? Because you've been involved to some degree in both.
Yeah, I mean, when I have been immersed in your community and with amazing songwriters and leaders in the UK, I've just noticed like a general, I would almost say like more sophistication of the kinds of music that's coming out, and like a more, I mean, I went to the Unicorn Gathering for the first time last year with you, and just like the immediate sound of, like, people are really good singers and writing really like sophisticated harmony and music, and where our culture here is a slightly younger, a little bit more emergent, and I experience that there's a lot more space for that emergence here in the States community. Like at the Unicorn Gathering, I was kind of like, cool, I have all these great songs that I want to share and like cross-pollinate, and there was literally really not a single space for me to share a song in that community. It was all like only the really well-known seasoned composers, and it was really like tightly held in that way. And so it's great that we have room more in this community for new people to emerge and share songs. But and yeah, then it's just like a more of a mixed bag in terms of like, when I go to a big song gathering here, I maybe take home like 3 songs, and I'm like, these kind of harmonically satisfy me in a way that I would, and that's just my personal, because I'm a musician. I like to sing more complicated, like juicy songs and share those. And the music, yeah, it's like it's lighter, easier so far in the States, and I think it will evolve over time and shift, and all these new little communities are popping out, and yeah, it's really a trip to like think about it and witness it, and be in your community and like experience that, and then come back. And I'm also like getting more involved in the world music of oral tradition, like through Village Harmony in the States, which a lot of people in the UK know and love Village Harmony. And so studying Balkan music and Georgian music and Corsican music, and that's its whole own subculture too. So it's just like all of these worlds that are existing and kind of rolling within their own little juices.
Well, a lot to learn from each other.
Yeah, totally.
So I have a question forming, not quite formed yet. Something along the lines of, if Annie was supreme ruler of people, what would singing look like? And go to town with this answer. What would you create for people?
This is a fun question.
Good.
Singing would be a delightful, powerful mixture of old time music that has the like beautiful, complex, like I think of like some of the Balkan music that I sing. It's just like, oh wow, we're holding this dissonant note for like 30 full seconds and like doing all these yodels and like amazing. So like having that quality of like epic beauty from olden times mixed with the same level of epicness of newly created content that people are people writing new songs that are like just as beautiful and just as potent as a lot of the old traditional music that we have access to, and really mixing them. And in my ideal world, we would have fully represented leadership from all cultures of music. And so if we're singing South African anti-apartheid music, we're learning it from amazing South African leaders. And for singing Black gospel music, we're singing it from amazing, regarded, fully funded, and well-known Black composers and carriers of that tradition. And just to have that full sort of like, and that does exist in a lot of ways, and there's so many amazing leaders from all the traditions, and I just want them all to be well paid and well loved and recognized for what they're doing and have their work out in the world. And capitalism would be over, and we don't need song leaders anymore because people have retained their oral tradition singing. That's a huge part of my work, to feel like, okay, if I'm going to be doing this and earning a living, I need to be fully committed to the mission of making myself obsolete. That's my goal as in my work. Like, I want to live in a world where we don't need song leaders because people have remembered their birthright to singing and do it in their communities. Yeah. And that's kind of the way I can reckon with being in this capitalist society, which I see as being the root of what causes all of the harms of the world. And so, okay, in my ideal world, capitalism is over. We live in our vibrant villages where no one is oppressed, and we all sing every day together in glorious, mind-blowing oral tradition style, and song fills our seasonal rituals, and old people sing and have to make a whole community. So yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, Annie, I want you for ruler. I mean, you'd be unsurprised to know that you're not the first choir composer to mention breaking down capitalism in order to bring songs for everybody. You should definitely hook up with Penny Stone, and I'd like to see a conversation between you two.
Yeah.
Annie, what kind of age are you?
I am 27.
27. So you're just right at the beginning. I wonder, maybe in your lifetime, it's quite possible that we could see things change in that direction.
I hope so. Whew.
It's really inspiring to know that you've got younger people coming through your networks, your communities, bringing songs in a fresh way, an inspired way. I'm 40, so I don't have the same energy as you, but I'm given energy by your generation to keep going and to really listen to
some kind of energy to run that amazing network you're running of all those leaders.
Well, we need each other, actually. We all need each other to keep being inspired, and the kind of conversations that are coming, particularly from younger generations, around some of the movements that are happening now are really important. I really urge people just to read your blog. And have you got other blogs that you're writing? Have you got other ways to follow Annie? Because you've got a lot to say on a lot of really important matters. So how do people get hold of you? How do they tag you, like you, Facebook, all of that kind of thing? Do you want to just say them all now?
Yeah, I mean, mostly where I share things that I'm doing or thinking about is on Instagram, actually. And I can put my handle in the link, but it's Zestinferna. That's my link. Feels kind of funny to say that on this platform, but that's where I write a lot of things and sing a lot of songs that you can listen to. And then I have my organization, which is just me, is called Heartland Harmony, and I have a website with a really nice little free library of oral tradition songs from friends of mine from around. And so if you ever need some new songs, you can go in there and listen. I really need to update it. And yeah, I have a Facebook for that same platform too, Heartland Harmony, some thoughts, sharings from other leaders.
Definitely worth a look. And how do you get paid for your work, Annie?
Oh, I have a Venmo and PayPal thing on my original. I have a big original song library too on my website, and people often who sing my songs in choirs will donate something to that, which is really great. But otherwise, it's my beloved, dear community of choir members who funds my existence. So thank you to them.
Would you want to get paid more for your compositions?
Yeah, I mean, if people are using them and getting, so my thing is like, okay, if you are sharing my music and performing it and getting paid to share my music, then it's really nice to share in that. And that's sort of something that I hold as my own ethos with paying other people's whose songs I'm singing. Like, am I getting paid to share this song? Cool. Well, then I want to share that abundance and pass it on to you, who I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have this song. And so that's what feels good to me too. So
That's just led me around to another question. We were going to wrap it up, but so in your ideal world where choir leaders are obsolete, choir composers, are they obsolete also? Do they still get paid for their work?
yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of imaginal capacity to think about what this, like so many other things. I mean, I'm kind of reminded of my own community here, which is, I live in a really small town in Wisconsin, filled with farmers and craftspeople and artists. And like a lot of people trade me meat from their grass-fed animals and milk and eggs and like beautiful body work. And there's just like kind of this other economy that exists here in the rural portion of my work. And so I could imagine this future world to, you know, people who are offering, this is the thing, is holding space, which has traditionally so often been done honestly by women and female-bodied people, and has not been valued. Holding space as work has not been valued, and that's a huge problem in our patriarchal society. And so, yeah, I'm like, people need to be in an energetic exchange for what they're offering. And I think people anywhere in any form of our society, including this future beautiful utopia world, need to have an energetic exchange for this gift of holding space. And whatever form that takes in that time will be great, whether it's people cooking for you, taking care of your children, providing you with what you need, celebrating you, all of that. But yeah, and then right now in our capitalist society, pay the people whose work you're using. It feels really good.
Amazing. Annie, do you have any kind of sense for the next song that's going to come to you? Have you got any kind of burning little things that you can imagine is going to come out as a song at any point soon?
Nope.
Not yet. Okay, we watch this space. Wait and see. I wonder if I prod you a little bit, will it come out?
I hope so. I would love to be making some songs. I mean, I'm so kind of deep in Bulgarian singing right now that I'm just really doing that and kind of not singing my own music right now. So that's kind of where my interest is right now and what I'm doing. Okay. And I think that could inform new music coming out too, but.
Okay. All right, one final thing. Do you have a message or words of wisdom for any budding songwriters or any composers that are already out there?
Something about keeping doing it and trusting that it's good enough. Trusting yourself enough to share what you're making, because you never know what's going to happen once it goes out in the world and who it's going to serve. And even if you write a song that you think is too goofy or too dumb to share, I've had that experience a lot where then I do, and I'm like, oh wow, this has been a transformative song for many people that I almost would have never shared. So yeah, just really trusting in that. And really, like, now is a great time. I mean, lots of amazing Black activists and artists in our community and world are asking us to really like look at specifically where white supremacy lives in our art and in our lives. And so really looking at like, what am I drawing from, and like, do I have a relationship with this thing that I am drawing on, and from my heritage or from deep study? And yeah, even if you're just purely writing songs just from yourself, there's always it's always good to be vigilant in the ways colonization is coming into our music and into the way we share it. So just now is if you're new to this conversation, like I'm relatively new to this conversation, just now is the time to really look at all that stuff in every corner of our artistic and leadership lives. So let's do it. Let's do that.
Yeah. Thank you, Annie, so much for all the inspiration. Incredibly generous, incredibly wise of heart and intellect, and I feel really grateful to know you. And thank you for letting me interview you.
Likewise, I've learned so much from you over the years, and it's so fun to get to hang out and chat in this way.
You're still so young. We've got years yet.
I know.
Okay, so if you're watching, follow this woman. Just watch her. You just know that one day, you never know, she might run for office. Let's see. Let's hope so. We live in a good world. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.